Hello, everyone. I'm Chiara, and today we are here with Amit Chowdhry. Hi, Amit. Thank you so much for being here with us, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Edge, our agency podcast dedicated to the evolving landscape of international media and the relationship between PRs and journalists. So let's get started with the very first question. You've been covering funding rounds and acquisition on Pulse 2 for years. What makes funding story newsworthy to you beyond the dollar figure?
There's like a few different factors that I would consider when deciding what makes a story newsworthy beyond a dollar figure. The first thing I would consider is like the business model of the company that raised the funding. If the business model helps people solve a lot of their day-to-day challenges, then I would definitely be interested in covering that news. And it's important for the business model to be unique and easy to explain what the company does in simple terms. So that's probably the first thing. The second thing I would consider is like the founders of the company. If the founders have run a company before and they've had a successful outcome, and this is a new company that they're working on, then this is definitely something that would be worth considering as well. Another factor is, the investment firms that are involved in the funding round and whether those investors have, if they've invested in other successful startups before. And I also have a major interest in cultivating relationships with startups and investors overseas outside of the US, as I feel there's not enough mainstream coverage in those areas as well. So this is why, I'm glad to have a great relationship with Disclosers, and your team is working with some of the most interesting companies worldwide as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. Moving on, I was wondering, in your opinion, how is the tech media landscape evolving when it comes to reporting on early stage companies?
So I believe that the early stage companies nowadays have more tools than ever before to gain attention. I've seen many early stage companies receive feedback in real time on platforms like Product Hunt and Reddit, Twitter,
Mm,
LinkedIn, and Hacker
yeah.
News. And when companies when they launch out of stealth mode, it becomes easier for them to issue the press releases and collaborate with PR firms to push for more aggressive marketing tactics. And they can also use to promote their brands YouTube and Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, podcasts. They can get coverage on news websites and email newsletters. So it's a lot easier to get attention, I believe. So based on that, I believe now is the best time to launch a company, and cloud computing costs are decreasing, and the tools for prospecting customers are also getting cheaper.
Hmm.
So you don't have to hire a massive sales team as an early stage company. And social media commerce is estimated to be valued at about $8.5 trillion by the year 2030 or so. So the potential to
Hmm.
become successful has become higher as well, as early stage company founders are, assuming that they're persistent and they're constantly looking for ways to improve every day. So that's my opinion on that.
Okay. Interesting opinion. Yeah, I agree
Mhm.
with that. Now let's talk about AI.
Mhm.
With AI, generated content and press releases become more and more common. What's your take on authenticity in tech journalism today?
So I would say that I have an optimistic take on using AI in journalism, especially because I consider
Mm-hmm.
myself a veteran and I've worked in the industry before a lot of these AI tools existed. So I'm more optimistic about it because it helps journalists with their job a lot more. Like journalists, they can use speech to text tools for transcribing audio and video interviews, and there's tools like Grammarly and
Oh yeah.
the tools like Google Gemini. They've made my life a lot easier because it
Yes.
helps me catch the grip spelling and grammar mistakes. And I also use a superhuman email service for quickly sending out email templates and managing my calendar. And
Okay.
AI can also help journalists find expert sources on specific topics, and it can be used for industry trends. Finding industry trends. Plus, it helps fact checking sources also a lot faster. But there are some news websites I noticed that use AI to quickly like
Mm-hmm.
scrape a few facts off press releases and earnings reports, and then they automatically publish articles without adding any kind of human touch to it. So, but I believe those types of companies will see a slowdown in growth because readers kind of see this type of content as being pretty boring, and they see it as being too robotic, in my opinion.
Changing topics once again. May I ask, what advice would you give to startup founders or comms teams who want to build long-term relationships with tech reporters?
So tech reporters and journalists were often assessing hundreds of pitches in our email and LinkedIn, messages every day. And
Mhm.
oftentimes these interactions, they don't really go beyond the quick digital interactions, you know? But I
Mhm.
believe that
Yeah.
setting up, podcast interactions like this are great as it helps put a face to the names that we email back and forth. And then, sharing articles on social media, like um, when the comms teams or founders, they shared articles on social media after the project is done and
Mhm.
gives good recognition to the journalists. And those are always appreciated. And some comm teams, they also go above and beyond by, mailing thank you cards or sending small gifts. So, those types of things, all these small things like that help here and there. So that's my opinion on that.
Okay. And
Yeah.
here we go with our last question.
Okay.
Could you share with us one key do and one don't that PR professionals should always keep in mind?
Okay. Yep, that sounds good.
Okay.
So there's one do that I prefer is that PR professionals, they often send me press releases with specific embargo times, and so one of the do's that I recommend is that the comms teams gives enough time to schedule the articles based on the embargo
Okay.
times. Like, so sometimes journalists will send me an embargo time that's 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. That's always appreciated. But if there's like, less than 48 hours or 24 hours, then we likely won't see the message in time.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so scheduling the article within
Of
that time
course.
would be too hard. And then
Hmm.
one don't is that I'm always constantly running behind on my emails by 3 to 4 weeks, and sometimes I organize my emails by conversation, sometimes I don't. But when my messages are organized by conversations, like the PR firms or comms firms that send a reply every couple of days saying, "Did you get this message? Did you get this message? Or do you have any update? Do you have any update?" Sometimes it
Yeah.
gets pushed to the back of my email inbox. So I'd say, just
Okay.
sort of be patient, or maybe send a
Yes.
text message if the cell phone number is available in the signature of the journalist, or maybe just be a
Yeah.
little bit patient, or things like that.
Without
Or maybe
feeling
yeah,
stressed. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
sure. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then
I agree with
sometimes,
this, of course.
yeah, yeah. Like there's sometimes
Okay.
there's one case where somebody sent me an email every day saying, "Did you get an update? Do you have an update? Do
Oh
you have
my
an update?"
God.
And
Yeah.
so
It's a
by the
bit
time I
stressful.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah, so by the time I saw the message, it was 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later, because it kept getting pushed more and more back
Sure.
to the back of my inbox and say reply to emails from oldest to newest, basically. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that's my one don't. Yep.
That's a nice tip for someone, of course. Well, thanks a lot for these insightful opinions and tips you decided to share with us. Once again, thanks for being part of our agency podcast Beyond the Edge. See you soon, Amit. Bye.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much for having me, and thank you for your time. I
Bye.
appreciate it. Okay, take care. Bye.